Hello and welcome to the pod. I'm Nathan Fink.
I'm Joelyn and Nathan, and this is New Hampshire Family Now,
a show about building family in the Granite State. Today in the pod, Joelyn talks me off a sports ledge, recommends community cafes, and later I'm joined by Higa, Executive Director of the Community Café Collaborative and founder of the Community Café Approach. New Hampshire Family Now is brought to you by the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation. Since 1962, the Charitable Foundation has worked hand in hand with generous and visionary citizens to maximize the power of giving and support, collaborate, and lead innovative initiatives. Initiatives like New Hampshire Tomorrow, which is focused on making sure children and families have access to education, healthcare, and career pathways to ensure every family member thrives. To learn more about New Hampshire Charitable Foundation and all their initiatives, go to www.nhcf.org. Today's show is also brought to you by New Hampshire Children's Trust's 9th Annual Summit, Parents Leading the Way. On September 22nd, the Children's Trust will be hosting an engaging virtual experience, convening parent leaders and professionals from across the Granite State to showcase the work of parent leaders and the agencies that support them. The focus? Parents as experts of their own experience using their voice to advocate for their families, improve their communities, and build more family-centered systems through policy change. Sign up now at nhchildrenstrust.org. Hello and welcome to the show. Joelyn, we have a lot to talk about today, including my own son's soccer career and how it seems to bring out the worst in me. But enough about my toxic masculinity.
Actually, no, I'd like to follow up on your son's soccer career and your life, if we may, because we're always looking at my life and my mess, and I'd like to delve into yours a little bit.
Okay. So I think I'm having a hard time knowing who to be while watching my son learn his way. And especially with sports, because I think sports is like a heightened expression of that. I have two older brothers. Well, I have one older brother. As you know, we lost my other brother to suicide not long ago, which, by the way, last week was Suicide Prevention Week. And so I encourage everyone out there who's concerned about suicide and loved ones to look into NAMI New Hampshire's Connect program. Sorry, that's kind of important to me. Anyway, I grew up with two older brothers and two younger sisters, all of which were sporty. And that seems to bring out something in me where I want to have discussions with my son, say after a practice or this game. He had a game and I want to have discussions with him about the game, but I find myself wanting to talk about the time he fell or the time he was distracted or whatever, like what was happening there, and not the goals he scored or how much fun he was having. All of a sudden I'm put in this place where I remember that my dad did the same thing. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, why don't we talk about my successes, Dad? Because I know why I fell. I know why I'm distracted, from time to time, because, well, he obviously, this is still about me, but he's 5 years old, going on 6. So that's kind of, I think, the thing that I'm going through.
Yep. So as a professional soccer coach, I can tell you, I get that. And I found myself in kind of that same situation with my own son, actually not even just my son, my whole team of 7-year-olds. Having me bringing my expectations, like I want to win. Yeah. And they're like, we're learning and we're just like having fun and playing. And that's all that really matters to them. And you have to like remember and like check yourself. And that's like a very humbling experience because you're like, oh, wait a minute. I want to win more than they do. How come? Right. Why is that? Yeah.
And I know you're competitive. So you are the where are you in your birth order?
I'm the youngest.
Youngest of how many?
Of 3.
Of 3. So I'm the youngest of, I have 2 half sisters. Long story. Divorce. The youngest of 3 boys. And then, obviously we had some life circumstance changes, but I grew up losing. So every time we play something, I don't really care about winning. I just like playing. But all of a sudden this is something else. For you're youngest of 3. So how does that play into your coaching kind of mentality or your thought process in this competitive space for kids?
I don't know. I didn't even think about my birth order.
Fighting for scraps.
Yeah, fighting for scraps. Well, I don't know because I'm the cute one, so I never really had to do much to like technically win. I just won by way of being me. But No, I think with sports, you really do just have to check yourself. And it's like, are you looking at your son on the field as an extension of yourself? Is that why you're more inclined to focus on, well, let me help you improve the things you did wrong versus great job with that assist, or that was really great that you congratulated your teammate, or that you asked someone if they're okay, or you had good sportsmanship, instead of focusing on those things.
And that's so funny. I'm like, okay, so who am I talking to when I talk about this? Because I'm clearly still addressing my younger athletic self, which I still think is in there. I'm 41 and I'm like, I still got it. But I also feel like, so something happens on the field where I want to talk, I want him to be his best self. But being his best self sometimes means, no, not sometimes, means talking about him as his best self, not as the kid who's picking dandelions. And that's also the version that I want to cultivate, right?
Yeah.
Because that's like curiosity, and there's nothing wrong with being distracted. I'm distracted. You're distracted all the time.
All the time.
All the time. So, and then I catch myself making like excuses for him somehow, or maybe it's some form of bargaining. Like I'm like, coach, he's normally not this distracted, or I don't know what's gotten into him. And I'm not saying these things for him or for his betterment. I'm clearly saying them for mine, or maybe to me and that younger me and the pressures that I felt. So here I am, though, introducing those same pressures. And then I think, all right, man, I have to step out. I've got to do something about this parenting journey, because it's doing something to me that I'm not quite comfortable with, it, because I'm not being my best parent or caregiver.
Well, I think just even acknowledging that, or even having the awareness to even realize that, make the connection that, oh, wait a minute, you're detracting from like the fun, and that the things that you're concerned about are things that your son and the rest of his teammates will learn over time. And it's not like they're going to get on the field and become, be immediate. There are the kids that are just like immediate natural. I can think of 3 on my team that were just
they're all doing performance enhancing something.
Yeah. Yes. Like there are kids that have that like natural ability, and then there are some that have ability, but they're learning, or they're maybe like soccer is not like their main thing, but it's a part of growing up and learning kind of context. But I think as so having the awareness that you have is good. You're in a good place to then grow from that, because now you can say and talk to other parents and say, how do you feel? Like what are your thoughts about this? Are you also on the sidelines like, why aren't you guys wanting to win? Like isn't this your focus? Or are there other parents that are more calm and focusing on not that you're not calm?
And I think that's kind of the trouble. I started this off with toxic masculinity, this idea, which is like a deep-seated institutional issue. We've got that influence cast over a lot of systems. And later in the show, I had a great conversation with Robin Higa, who's our keynote at the 9th Annual Summit. Shameless plug, by the way. September 22nd, if you haven't signed up. But just about the community cafe model. And I found so much strength in it, because I was thinking, look, there are problems, deep-seated institutional problems, that when we feel like it's our job to solve them, that is really stifling. But then when I talked to Robin, all of a sudden I felt like it's not necessarily about that issue. It's about connecting to other parents and looking at this and how we can find the humanity in each other. And this is a dumb simplification, because she is so wonderful at talking about this, but I just thought I'd put that out there.
So is there another parent or a coach, or how does Jen respond to
Well, Jen's great. Yeah, she's great. Her response is overwhelmingly positive and encouraging. And the other fathers are absolutely, I can see them gritting their teeth, and I can hear them yelling. And I'm thinking about that as, where that deep-seated issue or that response comes from, other than, that desire to win, like you were saying. So clearly you have that kind of embedded as well.
Absolutely.
But how do I get to the root of that, or get to expressing that problem in that, let's say, like that community cafe like setup where it feels disarming, is a whole nother ball of wax.
Yeah. I think looking at other parents, if there are other parents that you admire or you ever look at and you're like, God, how do they do that? Ask. And that's the environment that, a community cafe or a parent cafe like that's the environment that that style of meeting kind of creates, is that this like open space where you can talk about like, hey, I saw you did this, and how did you do that, and what informed that? Because I think other parents were always wondering, like, am I the only one that's sitting over here like wondering like why why are these kids like not focused on the ball? Why are they all clobbering the ball when I clearly told them 400 times like, you guys need to space out and maintain your positions? And that's very specific, but that
that clearly happened
all the time. But it's like where you bring this mindset to it, that you're like, they're 5, they're 7, and they're just like here to have fun. And I think the best soccer practice that I ever had was when I let the kids show me what they knew, and they actually knew more than me. They taught me a really cool game.
Robin Higa, she talks about the Community Café model, that it bends us towards connection, but I don't really understand.
Yeah, if you ever get the opportunity to participate in a community cafe or a parent cafe, super fun. They're fun, they're engaging. So kind of the premise is you're taking a larger subject and you're breaking it down. And so depending on how large the group is, typically it's like you're trying to answer 4 main questions under whatever your topic is. And it's kind of set out by groups. So different groups move from table to table, and they work on the question. They give their answers to discuss the question. And then at the end, there's like a harvest of information. So you have all of these different perspectives, and it's not like this lecture style question and answer. It's like these very organic, maybe not solutions, but just, it's conversations, and you can harvest information from the conversations that people had, that they're engaged. It's a topic that they want to speak about, that they have the space and the opportunity so that everyone has an opportunity to speak. And that, I think it's such a cool way to get, to do planning and needs assessments and things like that. It's such a cool concept.
I imagine you were saying organic, some really organic thoughts and answers and things like that would come out of that structure. But Joelyn, thanks again for coming back. We'll see you hopefully next week. I'd like to see more of you, not just this every other podcast situation.
Well, I don't have to talk to my co-host then.
When are you going to get less competitive that way? Is that ever going to happen?
No.
Okay. And when we come back, I interview Robin Higa, Executive Director of the Community Café Collaborative and founder of the Community Café Approach. Don't go anywhere. Today's show was also brought to you by the Children's Hospital at Dartmouth-Hitchcock and the Child Advocacy and Protection Program, a multidisciplinary program with the Children's Hospital established to evaluate and provide integrative care to suspected victims of child maltreatment. Together, a team of physicians, advanced practice registered nurses, social workers, nurses, and child life specialists work to provide consultation and evaluations of children who are suspected victims of abuse, so to serve in the best interest of children and families at multiple levels of prevention. For more information about Children's Hospital at Dartmouth-Hitchcock and the Child Advocacy Protection Program, visit www.chadkids.org/child-advocacy. This podcast was also brought to you by Family Support New Hampshire. Family Support New Hampshire is NH's coalition of family resource centers and family strengthening programs that exist to ensure Granite State families have access to resources so both caregivers and children can succeed, because supported families are strong families. To find a family resource center near you, visit www.fsnh.org. I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome Robin Higa, Executive Director of the Community Café Collaborative and founder of the Community Café Approach. Robin, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Nathan, for having me.
And of course, you'll be exploring relationship building and partnering with family leaders at the Children's Trust 9th Annual Summit on September 22nd. But for those who are not yet familiar, can you describe what the Community Café Approach is and how it functions?
I would love to. The Community Café Approach was begun by myself and a team of parents, actually, from our community. And we started this approach when we learned about the Strengthening Families Protective Factors framework. Being crazy parent leaders, if you do a lot in your community, you start getting asked to attend meetings. So another mom and myself attended a meeting where we learned about this amazing protective factors framework. We felt that this framework helped to tell the real story of the whole story about the child in the context of their family and the family in the context of the community, and also explained why it was important for us to all work together to strengthen families, that no matter how great of a family you are, or that everyone would need their community and a social support network, that we needed to help each other in order to strengthen families in our neighborhood. We were invited as parent leaders to a conference where we attended a workshop about parent cafes, and we thought this was an amazing concept where parents could learn the protective factors. Monica, the other mom, and myself who were in this workshop really thought that was a very valuable experience. And what we talked about was really what we needed, though, was something that in our community where we could build relationships and partnerships, where we could work together to build a stronger community. So after attending the workshop, we didn't want to go back and necessarily implement parent cafes. What we wanted was a place where families and practitioners, community members could all come together, youth could all come together and talk about how as a community we could strengthen families. And we hosted our first Community Café 13 years ago. What we wanted was to be able to have diverse perspectives come together in a room and be able to talk about what mattered to them. When we went back to our community and invited all our friends into the room and talked about the protective factors framework, we had 3 generations of parents in the room. We had multiple languages, families from the First Nations people. What we found from those conversations is that the protective factors framework really resonated with them. And although the research words didn't resonate with them, the idea of these 5 factors, or these ideas that the protective factors touched on did. So despite the difference in culture, language, everyone could relate to the definition of the protective factors. So then we put together an idea called community cafes, where families from their own neighborhood would host conversations that were meaningful for them, for their friends, for the families, in the context of their own neighborhood and what was happening and the issues that were particular to them. So your conference about parents leading the way really is at the heart of why we started hosting what we now call community cafes. It was that parents or family members, with the support of their community, would be leading the conversations that would help to inform how they wanted to network and build relationships with each other, how they wanted to work together, how they wanted to, what their ideas were as a group about what they could do to strengthen families. So integral to the approach, we call it the heart, mind, and spirit. We look to the World Cafe folks, and what resonated with us were the principles of hosting. This really seemed that to translate well, no matter what culture or language was being spoken in the room. And these were, when we took the ideas of these principles and translated it to things that we were doing in everyday life, being able to welcome people, having clarity in why you're inviting people, creating a setting that was inclusive of all, being able to have conversations and people being able to visualize what they are thinking as a group, and then getting what they were learning and sharing it out with others. Those were things that no matter what your experience, what your education, people could relate to. And that was sort of the heart of the community cafe approach. is how to create a space where all are welcome and it's inclusive and culturally relevant. The second part, the mind was of the community, or the thinking of the community cafe approach, was the protective factors framework. And that is in strengthening families and looking at the protective factors framework. Every human in the community could contribute to strengthening families. And we wanted an approach where whether you had kids, you didn't have kids, no matter how old you were valued and recognized as a contributor to strengthening families, so that no matter who walked through the door, they were included and welcomed as someone who contributed. If you're a baby and you're being held, the reciprocal love and the attachment and the bonding that you're giving to that adult who's holding you, you're contributing to strengthening families. If you're a grandparent who may or may not be raising grandkids, your perspective and your wisdom, your personal experience, and when you share that, you're strengthening families. As youth, sharing your experiences, sharing your ideas from fresh eyes. One of our community cafes, the room was filled with young people with tats. And several of the young men did auto detailing. So one was a young woman who aspired to go to college and wanted to eventually become a dentist. We talked about optimal child development and what it really meant when we strengthened families, and what it really meant when kids and youth were thriving. By the end of the cafe, they were asking, what could we do to contribute to strengthening families? And that's what we wanted. So we wanted conversations in our community, so no matter where you came from, what walk of life, you would feel like you belonged there. So we called the protective factors framework sort of the thinking or the mind behind the approach, that our conversations might not be talking about a particular protective factor, but we can certainly link the conversations to the protective factors framework. And as hosts of community cafes, we think about that. How do these conversations relate to strengthening families? The third part of the community cafe approach, we call the spirit. And when we say the spirit, we mean what we do so that we can feel our connection to others in the room, and then our connectedness to the community. As a parent leader, one of the things that I had a very difficult time with was going into the meeting and talking about how to solve problems, or meeting with other parents in my neighborhood, thinking, how are we going to solve the problems? And when we got deeper and deeper into the issue, we got to conversations like, how are we going to solve the problem about the racism? How are we going to solve the problems about systemic oppression? And those were things that we just knew in our lifetime we wouldn't be able to have the solutions to the problems. But we have been raised with this mindset of identifying a problem, maybe brainstorming solutions, picking a solution, and then trying to implement a solution that you've picked if you're lucky. And as a parent leader, I would frequently go home from this kind of a process, from meetings, feeling exhausted and powerless. And many of the times, the solutions that they were talking about didn't relate to me. It didn't relate to my life experience, to me and my family as a person of color. So one of the things about the spirit of the approach is to stop asking, how do we solve this problem? But instead, we spend time in community cafes where people have an opportunity to reflect and recognize what their strengths are, how their strengths are related to strengthening families, and how those strengths could contribute to strengthening families in the community. And then what are the strengths of the group? And by strengths, I don't necessarily mean talents. Strengths can also mean your relationships. So what are the relationships of the group? So based on this issue, what are our strengths? What is working well? And then based on our strengths and what's working well already in a community, how can we do more of that? this sort of spirit practice is called appreciative inquiry, where rather than saying, how do we solve this problem? Instead, we have discussions about what is our dream? What do we want to discover? Or what do we want to learn based on our dream? What should things look like then in our community? What is the design? So it's dream, discover, design, and then deliver. Because as the other thing as parent leaders is we've been to a lot of meetings. I've been to a lot of meetings where things just feel like a lot of process. And then I think, well, how is this actually going to materialize in my neighborhood? What is it actually going to look like to families in my community? I couldn't go home and describe to my friends how that was going to happen. So it felt like a lot of process, but not something concrete that we could experience in the neighborhood. And families no longer in this generation have the luxury of going to feel good stuff or spending a lot of time at meetings that doesn't have a direct benefit to their family. And then it's an added bonus that it's also contributing to strengthening many families in the community. There needs to be some sort of accountability. So the last piece of appreciative inquiry, dream, discover, design, is deliver. And deliver doesn't necessarily mean you've changed policy, although our cafes have. It doesn't necessarily mean a program has been made better, although community cafes have made programs better. Your next delivery, your next step could be, wow, now we want to learn this. We've discovered this. We know we have this idea of how things should be in our community, but we want to learn this. So maybe our next delivery might be having another conversation. So appreciative inquiry helps us to appreciate the strengths and what's working well. And it also, instead of being angry parents trying to convince the world to change, instead we're curious. The people in the room are curious, asking questions and learning together. And so what we've found in using appreciative inquiry is it helps me relate to folks that I think might not even have anything in common with my life. But because we have the same dream together, it allows us to work together. So those are the three components that make up the Community Cafe approach. It's the protective factors framework, the strengthening families protective factors framework, and the idea that everyone can contribute to their community to strengthening families, and appreciative inquiry, the opportunity to dream, discover, design, and deliver rather than solving problems.
Robin, what a wonderful preview to your keynote and workshop at the 9th Annual Parents Leading the Way Summit. Please, please, please come back as soon as you can. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Nathan. It was a pleasure, and I'm really looking forward to being at the conference with my friend Carolyn Solitaire. You take care.
To sign up for the summit, Parents Leading the Way, visit our website at www.nhchildrenstrust.org. Many thanks to New Hampshire's Office of Social and Emotional Wellness for sponsoring this podcast. Started within New Hampshire's Department of Education, the Office of Social and Emotional Wellness consolidates policy development and implements projects and programs that are focused on health and wellness with an emphasis on behavioral health of all students, youth, and families. To learn more about the Department of Education and its many programs and approaches, visit www.education.nh.gov. New Hampshire Family Now is listed on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and more. Listen wherever you get your podcasts or ask your smart speaker to play New Hampshire Family Now.